Clara stepped down from the dusty stagecoach with trembling hands, clutching the small carpet bag that held all the belongings she had left in the world. The little western town looked nothing like the busy city she had come from. Instead of tall buildings and crowded streets, there were wide open skies, a row of wooden shops, and a quietness that felt almost too heavy. The wind carried the soft smell of hay, horses, and warm earth. Clara blinked, trying to steady her breath. She had made a promise to herself that nothing would break her again, not after everything she had been through. She took a careful step onto the wooden plank sidewalk and looked around. People paused to glance at her. Some curious, some simply surprised to see a new face. Clara felt their eyes but kept her chin lifted. Even though inside, her heart felt small and unsettled. She wasn't used to being looked at anymore. She wasn't used to being anywhere new. But this was her new life, and she had to face it. A tall cowboy stepped toward her from near the hitching post. He walked with slow, steady steps, as though he never rushed for anything in life. His shirt sleeves were rolled to the elbow, showing arms strong from ranch work. His hat shaded his eyes, but Clara could still see the honesty in them. This was Luke, the man she had agreed to marry through letters. The man who needed help on his ranch. The man who didn't know her secrets, or her fears, or the sharp warning she was about to give him. "Miss Clara?" he asked softly, stopping a few steps away from her. His voice was calm, gentle. Nothing like the stormy voices she had known in the past. She nodded. "Yes, you must be Luke." He tipped his hat politely, and she noticed how even that simple gesture held respect. He didn't rush forward to take her bags. He didn't reach out to shake her hand. He simply stood there, giving her time to breathe. "I'm glad you made the trip safely," he said. "It's a long way out here." "It was," she replied quietly. "But I suppose distance is something I'm used to now." Luke didn't ask what she meant. He didn't push for details. Instead, he waited, as though he already understood she needed space to speak at her own pace. That alone eased Clara's tight shoulders a little. Still, she wasn't ready to trust that feeling. After a long moment, Clara drew in a steady breath. "Before we go anywhere, there's something I need to say. And I mean it quite seriously." Luke straightened slightly, giving her his full attention. She took a breath that felt heavy in her chest. "Touch me, and I'll leave," she said quietly, firmly. The words weren't loud, but they dropped into the quiet street like a stone falling into water. Luke blinked once, surprised but not offended. Clara held her carpetbag tightly, afraid he might misunderstand, or laugh, or show anger. But he didn't. He simply watched her, calm as a still pond. "I understand," he said after a moment. "And I won't push you for anything you're not ready for." Clara felt a strange warmth in her chest, relief mixed with confusion. She had expected disbelief or impatience, but Luke's acceptance was as genuine as the soft breeze around them. You aren't upset?" she asked, almost whispering. Luke shook his head. "I figure you have your reasons. And I asked for a wife who could help me with the ranch, not someone to fear me. I'm not here to break your rules." Those simple words softened something inside her, though she tried not to show it. She had built walls so high that she didn't expect anyone to respect them. "Well," she said softly, "thank you. Let me take you to the ranch," Luke offered. "It's a fair ride out of town." He didn't touch her bag. He didn't reach for her. He simply turned and motioned gently toward the wagon. Clara followed, feeling grateful for the space he gave her. She climbed into the wagon herself, settling on the wooden seat. Luke sat beside her but kept a comfortable distance, leaving plenty of room for her to breathe. The wheels began rolling, and they left the small town behind. The open land stretched endlessly around them, quiet and peaceful. Clara watched the fields of grass wave like a soft green sea. She felt small in the vastness, but in a strange way, she also felt hidden, protected from the memories she carried. Luke guided the horses with relaxed hands. He didn't talk much, but the silence wasn't uncomfortable. Clara found herself glancing at him occasionally. His profile was steady, calm, Almost reassuring, he looked like a man who carried his worries quietly, without letting them spill onto others. "How long have you lived on the ranch?" Clara finally asked, breaking the silence herself. "Since I was a boy," Luke said. "My parents passed it to me. Been running it on my own for the last few years." "I see," Clara murmured. "What about you?" he asked softly, but not in a way that demanded an answer. "I lived in the city," she said. "But life wasn't very kind there." She paused and swallowed. Letters seemed like a safer place than real life for a while. Luke nodded, not asking for more. Clara watched the road ahead. "I'm not here to make things difficult. I just need time. I can help with chores. I can cook a little. I just need space." "That's fair," Luke said. "We'll take everything at your pace." The wagon rolled on. Clara watched the horizon until the ranch finally appeared. A simple wooden house with a long porch, a barn nearby, and horses grazing peacefully. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, warm-looking, and full of life. Somehow, it felt more healing than anything she'd known in years. Luke stopped the wagon and helped her down, but again, he didn't touch her. Instead, he rested his hand on the wagon rail so she could steady herself without taking his hand. She appreciated the thoughtfulness more than she expected. Inside the house, everything smelled of wood, fresh air, and a bit of cinnamon. Clara stepped carefully across the floorboards, feeling out of place yet strangely comfortable. Luke showed her the small bedroom he had prepared for her: simple quilts, a sturdy bed, and a window that let in warm sunlight. "I hope it's all right," he said. "It's lovely," Clara replied truthfully. "Thank you." She set her carpetbag down and looked around. The room felt like it belonged to someone who needed peace. Someone like her. "I'll give you time to settle," Luke said, stepping back. "If you need anything, I'll be outside with the horses." He left quietly, without lingering. Clara stood alone in the room, letting out a slow breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding since she stepped off the stagecoach. For the first time in months, she didn't feel watched or judged. Luke had shown her more respect in an hour than she had received in years. She sat on the edge of the bed and allowed herself to relax. She remembered how she had warned him, "Touch me and I'll leave." It had been the only way she knew to protect her heart. But Luke's calm acceptance made her wonder if maybe, just maybe, she wouldn't have to run this time. Later in the afternoon, Clara stepped outside, curious to see more of the ranch. Luke was brushing one of the horses, speaking softly to it. The sight made her smile faintly. She approached slowly, not wanting to startle him. He noticed her and gave a warm nod. "Horse's name is Maple," he said gently. Clara reached out to stroke the horse's neck, but she kept her distance from Luke. Maple snorted happily, making Clara laugh softly. Luke watched the moment quietly, appreciating how gentle Clara naturally was. "You're good with animals," he said. "I like them," she replied. "They don't expect too much." Luke gave a small smile. "Neither do I." Clara felt something shift inside her, small, but undeniable. She didn't speak of it, though. Instead, she kept her movements slow, letting herself absorb the peacefulness of the ranch. As evening fell, they ate supper at opposite ends of the table. But the quiet felt warm, not cold. Clara noticed the way Luke prayed softly before his meal, not out of ritual, but humbly. She appreciated that he didn't insist she do the same. When she finished eating, Clara stood and thanked him for the food. Luke nodded gently, respecting her need for space. She went to her room and closed the door. But she didn't feel trapped. She felt safe. That was new. Lying in bed, Clara thought about her warning again. "Touch me, and I'll leave." She had arrived ready to protect herself at all costs. But Luke hadn't even tried to cross her line. Instead, he had shown her a kindness she had forgotten existed. As the ranch settled into quiet nighttime sounds, Clara finally closed her eyes with a sense of calm she hadn't felt in years. Maybe she didn't know what the future held. Maybe trust would take time. But for the first time in a long while, she didn't feel the urge to run. She felt the small stirrings of hope. Clara woke the next morning to the soft glow of sunlight streaming through the small window. For a moment, she forgot where she was. The quiet was so deep, so peaceful, that it felt like she had stepped into someone else's life. Then she remembered the long journey, the wooden house, the ranch, and Luke's calm voice promising not to rush her. Her heart felt lighter than the day before. Though she still carried the careful shield she had built around herself, she dressed slowly and stepped outside her room. The smell of fresh bread drifted through the air. Luke was already at the table, sipping his coffee with the quiet focus of someone used to early mornings. When he saw her, he pushed a small plate toward her. Not too close, not pushing anything on her. "Morning," he said. "Good morning," she replied softly. He didn't stare. He didn't make her feel watched or judged. Clara felt grateful for that. She sat down at the far end of the table. The bread was still warm, and the butter melted easily. She noticed Luke's plate was already half empty. He must have woken before sunrise. "You can sleep in if you need," Luke said between quiet bites. "Ranch life takes getting used to." "I don't mind waking early," Clara replied. "It feels peaceful here." Luke nodded. "That's the land for you. Doesn't ask for much, but it gives plenty if you treat it right." Clara listened to the gentle wisdom in his voice. She had always been surrounded by noise, voices full of demands, expectations, and pressures. This calm, steady life was new to her, almost unfamiliar in its kindness. She wondered if she could learn to belong here. After breakfast, Clara insisted on helping. She couldn't sit around doing nothing. She needed to feel useful. Needed to prove she wasn't there to be a burden. "I can wash the dishes," she said. Luke started to stand to do it himself, but paused when he saw the determination in her eyes. He nodded. "All right. If you need anything, I'll be outside." Clara washed the dishes slowly, almost reverently. The warm water felt soothing, and the simple task grounded her. She had never imagined herself on a ranch, washing dishes in a quiet kitchen, but the simplicity helped her breathe easier. When she stepped outside, the morning sun was bright but gentle. Luke was near the barn, checking the tools. Clara hesitated before approaching. She didn't want to interrupt him, but she also didn't want to hide away inside. "Is there anything I can help with?" she asked. Luke looked up, and Clara saw a softness in his expression, not pity, not surprise, but a quiet appreciation. "Sure," he said. "You can help with the chickens. It's easy work." He walked ahead, giving her enough space. Clara followed him to the chicken coop. The hens fluttered gently as they approached, clucking like they were sharing secrets. Luke showed her how to gather the eggs carefully. "They can break easy if they bump together," he warned gently. Clara nodded and picked up each egg like it was something fragile and precious. The hens pecked around her feet, not aggressively but curiously. Clara smiled. She couldn't remember the last time she had smiled at something so simple. "You're a natural," Luke said, watching from a distance. "I'm trying," she replied with a soft laugh. "I've never done this before. Doesn't look like it." Clara felt a small warmth bloom in her chest at the compliment. One that wasn't heavy or complicated. It was just kind. The day passed with a slow, pleasant rhythm. Clara helped with small chores, sweeping the porch, feeding the horses from afar, folding laundry. Luke never hovered. He worked steadily but quietly, letting her choose her own pace. But the townspeople weren't as quiet as Luke. When they went into town for supplies in the afternoon, Clara noticed the curious eyes immediately. People whispered behind glances, trying to piece together the story of the new mail-order bride who kept her distance from her husband. Clara felt her heart tighten. She had experienced whispers before quiet judgments disguised as curiosity. Luke must have sensed her discomfort because he slowed his steps and talked about the things around them, shifting her attention. "That there is Mr. Thompson's shop," he said. "He's got the best tools, though he likes to talk your ear off." Clara smiled slightly. Luke was trying to help her feel at ease without saying it directly. In the general store, the clerk greeted Luke warmly, then turned his eyes to Clara. "This must be your new wife," the clerk said with a smile. Luke nodded gently. "This is Clara." Clara offered a small, polite smile but stayed near the shelves, keeping space between herself and everyone else. She could feel the curious gaze on her. But Luke didn't push her to interact. He simply completed his purchases and thanked the clerk before they stepped outside. As soon as they were alone again, Clara let out a breath she didn't realize she had been holding. Luke noticed. "Town folks talk a lot," he said. "Don't let it bother you. I just don't like being watched," Clara said quietly. "People make assumptions quickly." "Let them," Luke replied with a shrug. "We know our truth. That's enough." His calm confidence surprised her. He wasn't ashamed of her distance. He wasn't embarrassed by it. That alone made Clara's chest loosen a little. On the ride back, the sky grew cloudy. The air shifted. Clara felt her heartbeat pick up. Storms had always unsettled her. They reminded her of too many painful endings. Ones filled not with harm, but with disappointment, raised voices, and broken promises. Rain had become a symbol of everything she wanted to forget. Luke noticed the way she stiffened. "Storms pass quickly here," he said gently. The first rumble of thunder rolled across the sky. Clara's hands tightened around the edge of the wagon seat. Luke didn't touch her. He kept his promise, but he spoke softly, giving her something else to focus on. "You know," he began, "when I was little, storms scared me too. My ma used to tell me stories during them, said it helped keep my imagination busy." "What kind of stories?" Clara asked, her voice tight. He chuckled softly. "Silly ones. About cows that thought they could predict the weather. Or chickens that held town meetings behind the barn." Clara blinked, surprised into a small laugh. "That sounds unusual. Exactly what a scared kid needed," Luke said. "Maybe it still works." The thunder rolled again, but Clara felt calmer listening to him. He wasn't trying to fix her fear. He wasn't judging it. He was simply offering comfort in the gentlest way he could. By the time they reached the ranch, the storm had softened into light rain. Clara let out a slow breath. Luke hopped off the wagon and opened the door for her, but didn't extend his hand. She appreciated the thoughtfulness more than she could express. Inside the warm house, Clara felt a sense of safety again. She helped Luke put the groceries away, moving quietly, but with growing confidence. When the rain started to fall harder outside, she stayed in the living room, close enough to hear Luke working in the small kitchen. Through the doorway, Luke glanced at her occasionally, just to make sure she was all right. Clara noticed, and instead of feeling pressured, she felt cared for. Later in the evening, they sat in the same room, Luke reading the newspaper, Clara sewing a small tear in her skirt. They didn't speak much, but the silence wasn't heavy. It felt like two people learning how to share space without stepping on each other's shadows. At one point, Clara looked up and studied Luke quietly. His patience was unusual. His calm was steady. He never reached out, never crossed a line, never asked why she needed such a strong boundary. He simply respected it. She felt something warm settle inside her. She wasn't ready to trust fully. She wasn't ready to let her guard down completely. But she wasn't afraid of him, the way she had feared she might be. Before going to bed, she paused at the doorway. "Luke," she said softly. He looked up. "Thank you. For today." He smiled gently. "Anytime." Clara went to her room, feeling something she hadn't felt in years: comfort. The ranch was still new, and her fears were still real. But she no longer felt alone in them. Luke's steady, respectful presence had begun to soften the distance between them, even if just a little. And Clara, for the first time, found herself wondering what tomorrow might bring, not with dread, but with a quiet, hopeful curiosity. Clara's third week on the ranch began with soft morning sunlight, the kind that crept slowly through the curtains and warmed her room without waking her harshly. She was growing used to the rhythm of ranch life, the sounds of horses moving in the early hours, the quiet clatter of pots as Luke prepared breakfast, and the fresh breeze that always found its way inside. Slowly, without even noticing it at first, she had begun to feel less like a stranger and more like someone who belonged in this peaceful world. She stepped out of her room and found Luke by the stove, warming biscuits. He gave her a gentle nod. as he always did. He didn't overwhelm her with words first thing in the morning, and she appreciated that small kindness. "Morning," he said. "Good morning," she replied softly. They sat at the table, eating in the comfortable quiet they had learned to share. Clara watched as Luke buttered his biscuit with his usual calm way, nothing rushed, nothing forced. She noticed how patient he was in everything he did, even in the smallest movements. It made her feel safe without him saying a single word about it. After breakfast, Clara helped tidy the kitchen. Luke stepped outside to check the fences and tend to the horses. Clara had begun taking on more chores. Not because Luke asked her to, but because she wanted to. She swept the porch, tended to the chickens, and even washed some of the saddles inside the barn. Every time she tried something new, Luke would offer a small, encouraging smile, never pushing her to do more, and never criticizing the way she did it. He had a talent for making her feel capable, even when tasks were new to her. One bright morning, as she carried a bucket of water across the yard, her foot caught on a small stone. Clara stumbled forward, losing her balance. The bucket tilted, water splashing over the ground. She gasped softly as her body pitched forward. Before she could fall, Luke reacted quickly without thinking. He stepped forward and gently steadied her by the arm. It was only for a second, a light, instinctive touch. But Clara froze, her breath caught in her chest. The world seemed to pause with her. Luke's hand immediately moved away, as though he realized at the same moment what he had done. His eyes widened slightly, not in fear, but in apology. "I'm sorry," he said quickly. "Didn't mean to startle you." Clara stood very still, gripping the empty bucket. She waited for the familiar fear to rise inside her, the same fear that had made her give Luke that strict warning on her first day. But it didn't come. Her heart beat fast, but not from panic. The touch hadn't hurt. It hadn't frightened her. It had simply surprised her. It's all right," she said softly. Luke looked unsure for the first time since she had met him. "I shouldn't have reached out. I know what you said." "I know," Clara replied, lifting her eyes to meet his. "But I didn't feel scared." Luke didn't move. He stayed where he was, giving her all the space she needed. "Still," he said quietly, "I'll be more careful." Clara swallowed, not knowing how to explain the strange warmth blooming inside her chest. She had spent so long protecting herself from touch that she had forgotten what kindness felt like. She didn't know how to handle the fact that Luke's gentle hand had not made her want to run. The moment lingered between them, soft as a whisper. Then Luke stepped back, giving her space once again. "You all right to finish the chores?" he asked, his voice steady. Clara nodded. "Yes, thank you." For the rest of the day, she moved through her tasks with a thoughtful quietness. She kept replaying the moment in her mind, not with fear, but with curiosity. The line she had drawn so sharply began to feel less like a wall and more like a door she wasn't sure she wanted closed anymore. By evening, the air grew cool, and the sky turned golden. Clara found herself sitting on the porch, watching the sun dip behind the hills. The colors spread gently across the sky, soft pinks and warm oranges. It was the kind of beauty she hadn't taken a moment to enjoy in years. Luke stepped onto the porch after finishing his chores. He glanced at her, but instead of sitting beside her, he sat on the other end of the porch, not too far, not too close. Clara realized he was still being careful, even after she had told him she wasn't afraid. "You don't have to sit so far," Clara said quietly. Luke looked slightly surprised but didn't question her. He moved a little closer, not close enough to crowd her. Just enough that she didn't have to raise her voice to talk. Clara felt a strange comfort settle inside her. They watched the sunset in silence for a while before she spoke again. "Luke," she began softly, "you were very kind today." He looked at her with warm eyes. "I just acted on instinct. Didn't want you getting hurt." "I know," she said. Luke didn't speak. He let her find her words. "I always thought touch meant danger," Clara continued gently. "Because of the people I knew before. They weren't gentle like you." Luke bowed his head slightly. "I'm sorry you had to go through that," She brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "But today, when you helped me stand, I didn't feel afraid. I felt safe." Luke's expression softened even more. "I'm glad. But I'll still wait until you're ready." Clara appreciated his patience more than she could express. She wasn't used to someone respecting her boundaries so completely. Over the next few days, Clara paid attention to the small things she had overlooked before. She watched how Luke woke before dawn, how he cared for the horses with quiet affection, how he spoke to the animals as if they understood him. She noticed his small smiles, the ones he gave when she accomplished a task she'd struggled with the week before. She noticed the gentle tone he used when he greeted her each morning, and she noticed that she no longer felt the need to stay on the opposite side of the room. One evening, she found herself making tea for both of them. It was something she hadn't done before, not because she couldn't, but because she had always felt too unsure. This time, she poured 2 cups and carried them to the porch where Luke was brushing off his boots. "I made some tea," she said, her voice a little shy. Luke blinked in surprise but smiled warmly. "Thank you." She handed him the cup carefully, their fingers almost brushing. The slight closeness didn't frighten her. It felt natural. New, but natural. Clara sat down beside him, not too close, but closer than she had ever chosen to sit before. Luke didn't comment on it. He simply accepted her presence with the same calm warmth he had shown since the day she arrived. They sat together, watching the gentle wind sway through the tall grass. Clara sipped her tea, feeling a quiet courage grow inside her. "You know," she said softly, "maybe my warning. Maybe it doesn't have to stay forever." Luke turned his head slightly, his expression patient and open. "Whenever you're ready to change it, just say the word. I'm not rushing you." Clara smiled, a small, sincere smile that felt like it belonged to a new version of herself. "I know," she whispered. "That's what makes it easier." As the sky turned dark and the stars appeared one by one, Clara felt something settle inside her, a gentle understanding that maybe trust didn't always come all at once. Sometimes it came slowly, through simple moments, through respect, through quiet evenings on a porch with someone who understood silence better than most people understood words. Clara didn't touch Luke that night. She didn't change every rule at once. But as she stood to go inside, she paused, gave him a shy smile, and said, "Good night, Luke." He returned the smile, warm and steady. "Good night, Clara." And for the first time, Clara felt that the distance between them wasn't something to fear anymore. It was something they were slowly crossing together, step by gentle step. The days that followed carried a softness Clara had never known before. Life on the ranch began to feel less like a place she had escaped to, and more like a place she was choosing each morning. She woke with a sense of quiet belonging, the kind that came slowly, building itself piece by piece through small gestures, shared silences, and moments of unexpected warmth. She still remembered the warning she had given Luke the moment she arrived: "Touch me, and I'll leave." But now, those words felt like a story from another lifetime. One morning, Clara stepped into the kitchen to find Luke already brewing coffee. His back was to her as he worked, and she watched him for a moment, noticing the steadiness in his shoulders. He moved with a calm rhythm that made her feel safe even when he wasn't speaking. When he turned and saw her, his smile was gentle, warm, and familiar. "Morning, Clara," he said. "Good morning." She reached for a cup, her fingers brushing the wooden shelf. Luke moved aside slightly to give her space, something he always did. But this time, Clara didn't stay on the opposite side of the room. She stood next to him as she poured her coffee. Her shoulder didn't touch his, but she didn't need as much distance as before. Luke noticed, but he didn't mention it. His silence was never empty. It was full of respect. They ate breakfast with easy conversation. Clara talked about the small garden she wanted to start behind the house. Luke listened with interest, offering help if she wanted it but not insisting. It was another thing Clara appreciated: he let her ideas be her own. After breakfast, they stepped outside to start the day's chores. The morning air was cool, the kind that made the world feel fresh and new. Clara carried a small basket to collect eggs, while Luke checked on the fences. As Clara moved through the yard, she realized how much had changed in such a short time. She no longer felt like she was tiptoeing through someone else's life. Her steps were steady now. She greeted the chickens softly, smiling when they clucked in response. She no longer feared the wide-open spaces or the quiet evenings. Even storms didn't frighten her the way they once had, but what changed her the most wasn't the ranch, it was Luke. Later that afternoon, Clara began preparing supper. She chopped vegetables, humming softly under her breath, something she hadn't done since she was a child. The melody filled the kitchen with warmth. Luke stepped in quietly, pausing at the doorway as though afraid to interrupt her peaceful moment. "That sounds nice," he said. Clara turned, cheeks warming. "I didn't realize I was humming." "You should do it more," Luke replied with a soft smile. "Makes the house feel alive." His words settled around her gently. She had never thought of herself as someone who could fill a home with warmth. But Luke said it with such sincerity that she believed him for a moment. As she cooked, Luke set the table. Every so often, their eyes met. There was no awkwardness anymore, only a calm understanding. When they finally sat down to eat, Clara felt a soft glow in her chest. This wasn't a forced partnership. It wasn't built on fear or expectation. It was built on patience, kindness, and small choices that slowly shaped something stronger. Halfway through supper, Clara wiped her hands on her apron and took a deep breath. "Luke," she began, her voice steady but soft. "I want to tell you something." He looked up, giving her his full attention. "I'm listening." She clasped her hands together, searching for the right words. "I know I set a strict rule when I arrived. I told you not to touch me. I said I'd leave if you did." Luke nodded, not interrupting. Clara took a breath. "The truth is, I wasn't just protecting myself from touch. I was protecting myself from being close to anyone. I had been hurt before, not in ways you can see, but in ways that made me afraid to trust again. I thought distance would keep me safe." Luke watched her with gentle eyes. He didn't try to comfort her with words. He let her speak. "I expected you to be like the people I knew before. I thought you'd break my boundaries or test me. But you didn't. You respected everything I said, even when it wasn't easy. You gave me space, even when you didn't understand why I needed it." Luke's expression softened even more. "I figured you needed time. Everyone does, in one way or another." Clara smiled faintly. "You're kinder than you know." He shook his head slightly. "Just trying to do right by you." She took another soft breath. "That day I tripped and you helped me. I didn't feel afraid. I felt safe. And that scared me in a different way. It made me realize that maybe I wasn't protecting myself anymore. Maybe I was just running from a future that didn't deserve to be feared." Luke's brows rose slightly, but he didn't speak. Clara continued, "I don't want to run anymore. Not from this place. And not from you." The words hung between them, gentle but full of meaning. Luke rested his hands on the table, though he didn't reach for her. "I'm glad you're staying," he said softly. "But I want you to choose it because you want to, not because you feel like you owe me anything." Clara shook her head quickly. "I don't feel forced. I feel understood. And that means more to me than anything." For a long moment, they stayed in quiet, both absorbing the truth of her words. Then Clara did something she had never done before. She stood up, heart fluttering, and walked to Luke's side of the table. He looked up at her, waiting, not moving. Clara hesitated only a second before gently taking his hand, slowly, carefully, entirely by her own choice. Luke froze, not out of fear but out of surprise. His hand stayed still, letting her guide the moment. Clara's fingers trembled slightly, but she didn't pull away. The warmth of his hand felt comforting, not frightening. "I guess my warning didn't last," she said with a shy smile. Luke's voice was soft but filled with emotion. "I never wanted to test it. I just wanted you to feel safe." Clara squeezed his hand gently. "I do. I truly do." Luke didn't move closer. Didn't pull her toward him. He let her decide the pace, as he always had. Clara sat beside him, leaving her hand in his. The simple closeness felt like the beginning of something she had never believed she could have, something peaceful, steady, and real. As evening settled over the ranch, the quiet felt different. It felt shared. Clara rested her head against the back of the chair, still holding Luke's hand. "You know," she said softly, "I didn't come here expecting anything. I thought I would live separately, quietly, doing chores and keeping my distance. I didn't think I could ever trust again." Luke turned his head slightly to look at her. "Trust takes time. And it's your time that matters, not anyone else's." Clara met his gaze with warmth. "You gave me time. And you gave me peace. I didn't know how much I needed both." Luke offered a small, grateful smile. "I'm just glad you're here." Clara leaned a little closer. Not enough to overwhelm either of them, but enough to show her growing comfort. "I'm glad too." They stayed there as the sky darkened, watching the stars appear one by one. The night was calm, the air cool and gentle. Clara felt a softness in her heart she hadn't felt in years, a feeling that whispered of a new beginning. Later, before going to her room, Clara paused at the doorway and looked back at Luke. "Good night," she said, her voice warm. "Good night, Clara," he replied, matching her warmth. She closed her door. But this time, she didn't feel she was closing herself off. She felt she was stepping into a life she was slowly choosing. A life built on respect, trust, and quiet love grown patiently, just like the slow sunrise that greeted them each morning. And for the first time since she had arrived, Clara no longer felt the need to protect her heart with warnings. She felt ready to open it, little by little, with someone who had never once asked her to rush.